Hey, my name's Izzy, and this is Jaws and nothing else ever again. This is taking the new Jaws Relentless Predator card and trying to make it as competitive as possible. Let's just hop right into this. First off, let's just talk about Jaws itself. The fact that it got a card is crazy. It's a one-of. It's not like they released a bunch of horror cards. It's just Jaws. So Jaws is 3, 2 red, for a 5/5 legendary creature shark with trample and haste and the following effect. When Jaws deals combat damage to a player, create that many blood tokens. When a non-creature artifact is sacrificed or destroyed, Jaws deals 1 damage to each opponent. So blood tokens are simple. They're a token artifact blood with the following effects. You pay 1 generic, you tap it, you discard a card, you sacrifice this artifact, and you draw a card. They give you just a little bit of card selection, probably the worst form because it's rummaging. You have to get rid of a card you don't want to use or can't use at that point in order to then use a card that, or in order to draw a card that you might want to use. But it's still card selection, so that's not awful. So when thinking about Jaws and trying to figure out exactly what you want to do with them, you really need to look at that second effect. The first effect is fine. You get a bunch of tokens. If you can use them to draw cards, cool. If you can sack them some other way, even better. Because the point of Jaws here, not only is it a 5/5 coming at people, as soon as it hits the field, you're just swinging very hard. It also has a win con in it, which is when a non-creature artifact is sacrificed or destroyed, Jaws deals 1 damage to each opponent. So if you can sacrifice enough artifacts, you can then take your opponents out completely just by sacrificing like 40 artifacts, right? Sounds harder than it is. Doesn't sound CEDH, but can we get it close enough to where you could bring it to a table? Let's get into that 99. First off, we got Duretti Scrap Savant. This is 3 red for a 3 loyalty Duretti. For +2, you get to discard up to 2 cards and then draw that many cards. It's -2, you get to sacrifice an artifact. If you do, return target artifact from your graveyard to the battlefield. And it's -10 is you get an emblem with whenever an artifact is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, return that card to the battlefield at the beginning of the next end step. -10 doesn't matter. We're not altering it. What we are using is it's +2 and it's -2. It's +2 to be able to discard 2 cards and draw 2 cards. It's pretty nice. And it matches that -2, allowing you to sacrifice an artifact and then return an artifact from your graveyard. It's great because Jaws gives you those artifacts to sack. So you can +2 to discard the big artifact you want to get out in the field, and then you can -2 to sacrifice a blood token and deal a damage to each opponent. Good card advantage, or I guess card selection. But with the setup here, it's kind of card advantage. And mana cheating. So, let's get into the 17 creatures here. Dragon Rage Channeler is 1 red for a 1/1 human shaman. With whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you surveil 1. This is going to help you fill your graveyard for doing stuff with your artifacts there. But also, red doesn't have a lot of cards going for it, right? You're in a monocolor deck, so you're going to use some cards that are kind of fallen out of mainstay in CEDH, but are still there for monocolor decks. This is card selection, right? Again, not necessarily advantage, but it does give you that ability that, since you're casting a lot of non-creature spells in this deck, in CEDH in general, being able to then go, oh, I don't need the top card. I don't need another land. I don't need that card. Oh, there's an artifact. Maybe I can cheat that out. Delirium, as long as there's 4 more card types among cards in your graveyard, it gets +2/+2 as flying and attack each combat if able. Making it a 3/3 to hit people isn't great. That's honestly not what you're aiming for here. This is just here for that surveil and is a great turn 1 play. Ragavan, Nimble Pilferer is still a great card. 1 red for a 2/1 Monkey Pirate with the following effects. When Ragavan deals combat damage to a player, you create a treasure token and exile the top card of the library, and you can cast it at the end of turn. And it's got dash for 1 and a red. This is not bad. It gives you a treasure. That treasure will be sacked. Sacking the treasure will deal damage to your opponents over time, and it gives you some card selection out of your opponents. I guess it's technically card advantage, but it's not your own card. So again, it's only like half a point for card advantage, right? Goblin Engineer is great. 1 in a red for a 1/2 Goblin Artificer. When it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an artifact card and put it in your graveyard, then shuffle your library, and for 1 red, you can tap it to sacrifice an artifact and return an artifact with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. There's a lot of good artifacts to grab here, a lot of great ramp, and again, being able to sacrifice the blood tokens you're making with your boss is pretty good. Iron Mirror, we need ramp. We need to be able to get our commander out on like turn 2, if not 3 at the latest. It swings as soon as it comes out. So 2 generic for a 1/1 mirror that taps for a red isn't bad. Lizard Blades is 1 in a red for a 1/1 equipment lizard with double strike, and equipped creature has double strike, and you can reconfigure for 2. So honestly, this is just a 4-drop card that gives your commander double strike, which gives you double the amount of blood tokens to mess around with, which is pretty good. My cat is being my cat right now. I'm going to just show it. There's my cat. She's trying to be sneaky. Going to show my cat off. Now I'm going to put my cat back down. Ornithopter Paradise is 2 generic for an artifact creature thopter, 0/2 artifact creature thopter with flying, and you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color. Again, just more ramp there. We're really looking for ways to ramp and be able to use that rummaging as a way to find your combos. Reckless Fireweaver is 1 in red for a 1/3 human artifaster that whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. This is straight up great in this deck. I tried to make this deck more of an aggressive, like super fast-paced deck, and you can't get there. It's just, it doesn't have the combo with its own self. The combo is with other cards that happen to like artifacts on the field. But what it can do is slowly burn your opponents out. Kind of quickly burn your opponents out. And 1 in a red to get something that like, oh, I dealt 5 damage to the guy with my commander. Now I made 5 tokens. All those tokens deal 5 damage to each of my opponents. Or a total of 5 damage to each of my opponents. So that's 10 to 1, 5 to 2 others. And you can just keep going, dealing more and more damage. Burgi, God of Storytelling, is 1 in a red for a 3/3 god that whenever you cast a spell, you add a red. Until the end of turn, you don't lose mana. You don't lose this mana as steps end, and creatures you control can boast twice. That side's fine. It's okay to get that little extra boost. We're really here for the Hornfell, Horn of Bounty. For 1 in a red, you're getting a legendary artifact, and you can discard a card to exile 2 cards from your library and play those cards this turn. This really lets you push to try to find your combo when needed. Captain Lannery Storm is 2 in a red for a 2/2 human pirate with haste, and when it attacks, you get a treasure. Whenever you sacrifice a treasure, it gets +1/+0 till end of turn. Again, this is just a way to make a treasure. Once your commander's out, that treasure will then be damaged to your opponents, which is pretty nice. Crime Novelist is 2 in a red for a 1/3 Goblin Bard that whenever you sacrifice an artifact, you put a 1/1 counter on it, and you get a red. So this turns your blood counters, or your blood tokens, into 1 less mana and a buff. And by 1 less mana, I mean it's free. So you do have to pay 1 to sacrifice it first, but then every subsequent blood token is free. So you can just keep searching for your card that you, any card that you need at that point. Because after you pay 1 to sacrifice it, you just get that 1 red to just keep going boom, 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 over and over and over again. Next up is Ingenious Artillerist, which is 2 in a red for a 3/1 human artificer that whenever 1 or more artifacts into the battlefield you control, it deals that much damage to each opponent. So if like 5 blood tokens come in, you deal 5 damage to each opponent. So worded different than Reckless Fireweaver, but does the same thing. Just more damage to your opponents. Professional Facebreaker is 2 in a red for a 2/3 human warrior with menace, and whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, you get a treasure token. And sacrifice a treasure, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. Great card advantage, great mana advantage, and a great usage of sacrificing a sacrifice outlet and a sacrifice candidate in treasures to help your commander deal some more damage. Simian Spirit Guide, it's 2 in a red for a 2/2 spirit that you can exile to get a red. This is helps your commander out faster. Whiffed Stalker Ardent is 2 in a red for a 2/3 Drix Artificer that whenever an artifact you control enters, it deals 1 damage to each opponent, and you can warp it for a red, so you can just cast it for 1 and then exile at the beginning of the next step, but you can cast it from exile on the turn. This is great. It's just another way to deal more damage when your commander's hitting someone. Knuckles the Echidna is great. This is 2 and 2 red for a 2/4 Echidna Warrior with double strike, trample, and haste, and whenever 1 or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create a treasure token and treasure hunt. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 30 or more artifacts, you win the game. You can make a crap ton of artifacts with your commander. You can win the game with Knuckles if no one can remove him. Not exactly what you want to go for. Kind of like, oh, we got to remove Knuckles. But sometimes you'd be surprised in CEDH where people just go, oh, that guy's going for a win. He's trying to, instead of removing Knuckles, they're going for a win to just stop you from winning. And then they fail. And then the other guy spent all their time trying to stop him. And then the other two, if they happen to fail, you could win with Knuckles if they had no way to remove it. As long as they didn't counter in the first place. Roaming Throne is 4 generic for a 4/4 Golem with Ward 2. In addition, you choose a creature type. When you choose it is the creature chosen creature type in addition to the type. And triggered abilities of other creatures you control of the chosen type trigger in addition to time. This just double triggers your shark. This gives you 2 triggers off your shark for both effects. So not only do you get 10 treasures, you also deal 2 damage to each opponent per card, per artifact being destroyed or sacrificed. Absolutely fantastic way to start wrecking your opponent's health. Sylphim Mayhem Dominus is 2 and 2 red for a 5/4 Phyrexian Horror. If a source you control would deal non-combat damage to an opponent or permanent opponent controls, it deals double that damage to that player instead, and you can pay 1 and 2 Phyrexian red, discard 2 cards, and put an indestructible counter on him. The whole point of Sylphium here is to just really push the notion of more damage. Doubling the 1 damage is 2 damage. But it gets more when you have more stuff. When you're like Roaming Throne, well, now it's doing 1 damage, and that's 2 damage each, so that's 10 damage to each. And then, oh, you do it again, so instead of another 5, it's another 10 each. So all of a sudden, like, if you sacrifice 5 blood tokens, you're dealing not only... you're dealing like 20 damage to each of them. And that adds up insanely. That's half their life already. They already took 5 damage. Not to mention if you have some of the other cards just dealing more damage. And these guys double up too with Sylphium, so it just ends up being a lot of damage for only 4 mana. We're trying to keep the mana cost low here, guys. This is CEDH, right? Let's get into the sorceries, though. Okay, Faithless Looting is a red for a sorcery. Draw 2 cards, discard a card, 2 cards. Flashback 2 in a red, right? Simple way to fill your graveyard up. Simple way for card selection. Gamble, 1 red for a sorcery. Search your library for a card, put in your hand, discard a card at random, then shuffle. It's great. If you dip the card that you're looking for, that's fine. You have plenty of ways to get artifacts back from your graveyard. Rite of Flames is a red for a sorcery that adds 2 red. This is just a ritual trying to get your commander out faster. Vandal Blast is a red for a sorcery. Destroy target artifact that you don't control. And Overload for 4 in a red, making it destroy each artifact you don't control. This is perfect. A lot of people running artifacts. Wiping them out can be very useful at the right time. Plus, the artifacts for your commander do not have to be yours. So this pops all those artifacts and can end up winning the game. Jessica's Wheel is 2 in a red for a sorcery. You choose 1. If you control your commander, you choose both. 1 in a red, you add a red for each card target opponent controls or target opponent has in the hand. That's normally around 5 if you're testing. And X are the top 3 cards of your library. You may play them this turn. Just a great way to try to push for a game if you really need to. And Wheel of Fortune is 2 in a red sorcery. All players must discard their hand and draw 7 new cards. This is here because of cards later on that just help with combo. Up next is Gut Shot. This is 1 Phyrexian red for an instant. It deals 1 damage to target creature or player. The more I see CEDH games, the more I think Gut Shot is better and better. A free card to deal 1 damage to anything can be very insane, especially with how many cards have 1 toughness. Being able to just Gut Shot a problematic card that's stopping you, or a card that might win the game, is pretty good. Pyroblast is a 1 red to counter a blue spell or destroy a blue spell, and Red Elemental Blast is a 1 red to counter a blue spell or destroy a blue spell. Absolutely fantastic. There's a lot of blue running around in CEDH. Lightning Bolt is 1 red to deal 3 damage to any target. Again, it kind of falls into that Gut Shot idea. Yes, it's not always the best, but being able to pop something that is problematic, especially since you're in mono red and you need some type of interaction. Upgrade is 1 in red for an instant, and you choose 1, deal 3 damage to target creature, or destroy an artifact. Both can be very useful. Desperate Ritual is 1 in a red for an instant arcane, and you add 3 red. This is just another ritual to get your commander up faster. Same thing with Poetic Ritual, 1 in a red for an instant that adds 3 red. Untimely Malfunction is 1 in a red for an instant that you choose 1. Destroy target artifact. Change the target of target spell or ability with a single target, or one or two target creature cards can't block this turn. So that can't block can be kind of useful if you think you can win and you can block like 2 creatures so that your commander can get in without having to rely on his trample. But on top of that, being able to pop an artifact for 2 is never bad. It's got that abrade stuff. And then being able to just redirect something targeting your commander isn't bad. Deflecting SWAT, 2 and a red for an instant. If you control your commander, it's free. And you may choose new targets for target spell or ability. Perfectly fine. Kind of works with this, but it's free. And Seething Song is 2 and a red for an instant that adds 5 mana. This is just another great way to get your commander out early on. Now let's get into the artifacts. Lots of artifacts. It's an artifact-heavy deck. Chrome Mox is 0 for an artifact, and when it enters, you exile a non-artifact, non-land card from your hand, and you can add 1 mana of any color in that mana. Color item. Everflowing Chalice is 0 for an artifact with multi-kicker 2, and it enters with charge counter for each time it was kicked, and you get to add 1 colorless for each charge counter on it. Just a way to get your commander out, and a great card to use to sack a lot of blood tokens. Lioneye Diamond, 0 for an artifact. You sack it to add 3 mana, and you have to discard you sack it, discard your hand, and then add 3 mana. This is absolutely great because it's part of the combo line, allowing you to just constantly sacrifice Lioneye Diamond. Again, with your commander dealing damage whenever you sacrifice an artifact. If you can get Lion's Eye Diamond going off infinitely, you can just end your opponents. That is what made me think about this deck in the first place for CEDH. Lotus Petal is 0 for an artifact that you can sack to tap, sack, and add 1 mana of any color. Mox Amber 0 for a legendary artifact that you tap to add 1 mana of any legendary creature or planeswalker you control. You get your commander out like turn 1 or 2 in this deck. This card's good. Mox Diamond 0 for an artifact that it enters, you discard a land, and then it can be tapped for any color. Mox Opal is 0 for an artifact that taps for any color as long as you have 3 or more artifacts. Tormod's Crypt is 0 for an artifact that you can tap to sacrifice to exile all cards from target player's graveyard. This is great. There's a lot of graveyard shenanigans going on. Having Tormod's Crypt really just makes people go, I can't go off. I have to remove Tormod's Crypt because otherwise I lose because I can't use my graveyard. And that's exactly what you're aiming for. You're aiming directly at those cards. It's a silver bullet, but in this deck, mono red, go ahead and toss a silver bullet in there. Plus, it does trigger your commander. Commander's Plate, again, kind of a weird card, not really CDH, but 1 generic for an equipment. Equipped creature gets +3/+3 and has protection from each color not in its color identity, so it's protection for everything that's not red. And equipped commander is 3. So total, this is a 4-drop card, but getting your commander to become an 8/8 so you get more treasures and making it so people can't even block it or target it is useful. Vault, a Mana Vault is 1 generic for an artifact, and you tap it to add 3 generic to or 3 colorless mana to your mana pool. And then you can't untap it during your untap step. As long as it's tapped, you take a damage, but you can pay 4 to untap it. Manifold Key is here because 1 generic for an artifact. Tap to untap target artifact really helps you draw extra cards with something like the One Ring. And then for 3 generic, you can tap it to make target creature can't be blocked this turn, which can help your commander get in. It does have trample. But that does come in, but this is mainly here because, yeah, we are doing a lot of stuff with the One Ring to kind of ramp out to draw out because we don't have a lot of draw. Soul Ring is 1 generic for an artifact that taps for 2 colorless. Soul Guide Lanterns, another silver bullet, 1 generic for an artifact that enters, exile target card from a graveyard, and for tapping it, you can sacrifice it to exile each opponent's graveyard, and for 1, you can sack it, or tap it, sack it, and draw a card. So this can replace itself. It does single hit a target card in a graveyard, so if someone happens to be slap happy and dumps a combo card in their graveyard that they're hoping to use later on, this gets rid of that. But being able to just tap it, sack it, and exile each opponent's graveyard really screws them all up. You really hold them to their key like, oh, no, sorry, you can't do that. Voltaic Key is 1 generic for an artifact. Tap it, untap our target artifact. Again, the One Ring. Arcane Signet is 2 generic for an artifact. You tap to add 1 color of your commander's identity. Defense Grid is 2 generic for an artifact. You tap each spell costs 3 more to cast, except during this turn. English people. Except during its controller's turn. You play this when you're trying to go off to make your opponents not be able to stop you. Just know that if you can't stop it, find a way to sack it. Belrith Stone is 2 generic to add a mana of any land your opponent can produce. Grim Monolith is 2 generic to tap it and it does not untap during its untap step, but you can tap it for 3 colorless, and you can pay 4 to untap it. Just another way to kind of like ramp it. Grinding Station's an artifact that you can tap to sacrifice an artifact, and target player mills 3 cards, and when an artifact enters the battlefield, you may untap Grinding Station. This is used to just kind of infinitely do stuff with Lion's Eye Diamond. You can infinitely tap this and then mill 3, because the 3 replaces itself, so you can keep casting Lion's Eye Diamond. It's not infinite, but it's equivalent to like a 30-year deck, which by the time you're pulling it off could be enough to take your opponents out with your commander's effect. Liquid Metal Torque is too generic to tap for an artifact, and you tap it for colors. You can also tap it to make a non-land permanent artifact. That's not really what we're going for. Mind Stone's too generic for an artifact that taps for a colorless, and then you can pay 1 to tap it, sack it, draw a card. Moon Silver Key is too generic for an artifact that you can pay 1 to tap it, to sack it, to search your library for an artifact card with mana value, with a mana ability or basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle. So you could get a basic land, or you can go grab like your One Ring. Not your One Ring, your Soul Ring. Prismatic Lens is too generic for an artifact. You can tap it to add a colorless, or you can pay 1 to tap it to add 1 mana of any color. Thought Vessel is too generic for an artifact. You have no maximum hand size, and you can tap it to add a colorless. Again, a lot of these would normally not be great, but you're in mono red, so you kind of do what you do. Torpor Orb. Creatures enter the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger. You do not have ETBs on like any of your creatures. Maybe, I think like 1 or 2. But it's creatures entering the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger. Most of your ETB effects are artifacts entering, so that doesn't stop that. So Torpor Orb is a great way to stop specific win cons. Fire Shrieker is too generic for an artifact that equipment with equipped creature gets double strike for equip 2. So this is 5 altogether to give your commander double strike. Again, that's very useful in commander, or in this deck specifically. Monument to Endurance is 3 generic for an artifact. Whenever you discard a card, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. Draw a card, create a treasure. Each opponent loses 3 life. Because your blood tokens have you discard a card, you can easily get these off. Drawing an extra card is good. Making a treasure is not bad. And 3 damage to each opponent is not bad either. Helps with the deck. Nettle Cyst is 3 generic for an artifact equipped with living weapon. So it comes in equipped to a 0/0 black Phyrexian Germ, and equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact or equipment you control, or enchantment you control, and equip 2. Treat this as a 5-drop, put it on your commander. All of a sudden, you're making like way too many blood tokens. Like if you hit once and then you cast this the next turn, you're all of a sudden like making an extra 5, or with the Nettle Quest and any of your ramp, you're making like an extra 5 to 7 blood tokens, which can be very gross. Sonic Screwdriver is 3 generic for an artifact, and you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color, or you can pay 1 to tap it to untap target artifacts, or you can pay 2 to tap it to scry 1, or you can pay 3 to tap it to make a creature unblockable. You're usually using this either for ramp or to untap something. Mainly your One Ring here. The Reaver Cleaver is 2 in a red for an equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has trample. Whenever this equipped creature is combat damage to player or planeswalker, you get to create that many treasure tokens. It just doubles up the effect of your command. It also pays for itself. If you have this equipped, you make 6 blood tokens and 6 treasures. You can sacrifice the 6 treasures to sacrifice the 6 blood tokens, dealing a total of 12 damage to your opponents. But it's also just more artifacts hitting the field, dealing more damage depending on what you have on the field. Crookland Ironworks, just something to do with your blood tokens, guys. 4 generic for an artifact that you can sacrifice an artifact to add to colorless. This just gives you something to do. And it's a sack outlet if you're like, oh, I don't have the mana to sack all this stuff, but I can just sack them to Kirk. This allows you to just end your opponents quickly. The One Ring is 4 generic for legendary artifact with indestructible. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you gain protection from everything until your next turn. And at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life for each burden counter on the One Ring. And you can tap it to put a burden counter on it to draw a card for each burden counter on the One Ring. You can do this to just draw a lot of cards with the untap effects in the deck, right? So you tap it, add a burden counter, draw a card, untap it, tap it, add a second burden counter, draw 2 cards, untap it again, add a third one, draw 3 cards. Really pushing that level of like, how many cards can I draw? And Radiant Lotus is good in this deck, actually, surprisingly. It's 6 generic for an artifact. With sacrifice 1 or more artifacts, choose a color. Target player adds 3 mana of the chosen color for each artifact sacrificed this way. You can sacrifice, like, even just sacrificing 5 blood tokens this way, you get 15 red mana. Absolutely disgusting. A great way to just push for the game. And only 3 enchantments. We've got Underworld Breach, 1 in a colorless for enchantment. Each non-land card in your graveyard has escape. The escape cost is equal to the card's mana cost, plus exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. And at the beginning of your end step, sacrifice Underworld Breach. This is just that kind of combo. You're using this to with Lion's Eye Diamond to just try to go infinite by infinitely sacrificing your Lion's Eye Diamond to something like Grinding Station. And since you're constantly sacrificing Lion's Eye Diamond, you're constantly dealing damage to your opponents with your commander. Blood Moon is 2 in a red for enchantment, non-basic lands or mountains, slow down your opponents. And Fiery Emancipation's 3 and 3 red for enchantment. My cat is trying to be sneaky. She's not sneaky. She sneaks underneath the monitor and just goes, hoo hoo, look at me, I'm a sneaky cat. She's not sneaky. She knows I know what she's doing. But this is an enchantment that if a source you control would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals triple that damage to that permanent or player instead. This is, there's other doublers, but the other ones are like 5 mana. I added the 4 mana one, but this one, triple damage is gross. And here's why. With Fiery Emancipation, if you hit with your commander, that's 15 damage. That's 15 tokens. If you have 1 card that deals a damage for each artifact that hits the field, that's 15 hitting the field. You deal 3 times 15 to each opponent. That is a total of 45 damage. They all die instantly. So it is technically a combo with your commander. It's a 2-card combo. Not the best, but still fun. And lands, you've got your basic, like, classic lands here. The different ones here, like Inventor's Fear is here because you can use it to go grab whatever artifact you need. And Urza Saga is here just because you're in the lower colors. So that's the idea. You're honestly, the point of the deck is to get your commander out fast, but make sure you have something to do with it. Because you can really end up flubbing around and just end up swinging your big commander, which doesn't do much without other cards. Is this CEDH is the main question. And the answer is no. This is definitely a 4-bracket deck. But here's the thing about well-built 4-bracket decks, about those 4-bracket decks that have CEDH in mind, right? You can still walk up to a CEDH table and go, oh yeah, I'm playing Jaws Relentless Predator. And you can still possibly win. If everyone's at their A game, people are going to, like, again, not talking TCEDH. We're not talking tournament level, right? We're talking just a friendly game of Commander, but competitive Commander, right? Getting your draws out quickly, hitting someone for 5 damage, making a bunch of these tokens, trying to abuse them and use them to damage more opponents' outs, getting them lower life can be very useful and can be very threatening. You might not win, but you are a threat. You are in the game doing stuff. And if the game happens to go a little too long because everyone's on their A game, stopping people from winning, you can win without your combo in this deck. You can win just from insane amount of damage being dealt to your opponents. So I think it's close enough that yes, you could bring this to a CDH table and win a game. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a fun night. Peace.